It Comes at Night is a brand new film by the studio A24 and follows a family in the woods where, after an unknown virus breaks out in the environment that no one seems to know anything about, these people have to survive. And one day a family comes by, and the family of the house doesn't know what to do with them. They think that they're infected, but they bring them in anyway, and the paranoia of what is outside looms over the families as time goes on. Now, for those of you who know of A24 and its profound legacy, it made a huge stride last year with the film Moonlight, and it won Best Picture in one of the most epic fuck-ups of the year I've ever seen since Steve Harvey screwed up the Miss Universe pageant, which I still make fun of to this day.
Moonlight, you guys won Best Picture.
Moonlight won. Come on, this is not a joke. This is not a joke. I'm afraid they read the wrong thing.
This is not a joke. Moonlight has won Best Picture. Moonlight, Best Picture.
Now, this movie has garnered a lot of controversy, especially around its title. Its title is very, very vague. This whole movie is very divided, partially because the marketing is either hit or miss for people. However, the best way to really go into this film is to not look at the marketing at all, like I always do. The biggest problem I face with this movie is the fact that in this world, there can only be this sort of black and white perspective where it's either you loved it or you really, really, really hate and despise it and condemn it to hell. This movie leans towards middle for me, but at the same time, I also think it's bad. This movie has a lot of problems. And there is a really glaring problem that we will get to, but first, the positives. I think the positive of this film definitely is with some of the acting. You can really tell the paranoia that is within the characters themselves as they are trying to survive in this world, and they can't trust anyone. However, at the same time, I also feel that other movies have done this before. And that's probably going to be a common thing that I say throughout this review, is that other movies and television shows have done this concept before, particularly with The Walking Dead. But this movie also has a problem with the narrative. The narrative problem of this film lies within the dream sequences, which is an overused trope in a lot of art house films and a lot of horror films as well. You have this dream sequence, and just as soon as something gets interesting, it's all a dream. Except for the ending, which is kind of a thing that I'll get to in a minute. But the main problem I find in this film is that there is a substantial amount of predictability with some of this stuff. Now, I'm not talking about structurally, but there is a motif that gets put into this film where you can basically guess what is a dream. And that is through the use of aspect ratios, which is also something that Chris Stuckman has stated before on his YouTube channel, essentially, where he goes in and dives into the use of aspect ratios. And another positive I really find in this film is the use of visual storytelling. Much of the story is definitely used a lot with the visual perspective. In fact, the last 20 minutes is essentially mostly visual storytelling. And it's really well done. And the first 20 minutes of this movie, yeah, while it does kind of slog, kind of gives you more of the visual aspect of what this story is about. And that's pretty much all the positives. The acting and the cinematography slash visual storytelling is something that is definitely good in this film. However, the hugest, and I mean the biggest and hugest flaw in this entire movie is the narrative. And the ending definitely is one of those deal breakers for me. Now, if you haven't watched the movie, I'm going to discuss the ending. If you haven't seen the movie, go watch it. If you don't care, as I said before, I will be starting the spoiler part now. So basically, towards the end of the film, they do again the little motif with the aspect ratios and make the framing a little bit smaller and smaller to give it a different effect. However, it is a different aspect ratio than the one in the dreams, but it is not exactly the same as the one used in real life. Now, either it can go in two ways in the ending. The ending of the movie sees the boy character, the child character that we focus on primarily throughout the entire story, die. This is something that is going to be very controversial to a lot of people, but I think this ending is probably one of the worst endings I've ever seen. The fact that we know from the repeated dream sequences using the same technique of the aspect ratio change, it lets the audience know that this is a dream. The entire ending portion where they kill the side family, and then he dies, the main character dies, is all a dream. The ending of the film is so lazily done that by the end of it, it's like, this didn't even happen. This is probably something that he imagined happening. This entire last, 5 minutes of the film is entirely something that he might have thought of. Now, granted, that could play into the whole paranoia aspect, this character is paranoid of what could happen if he gets infected, and what happens, if this other family gets infected. But the last portion of this movie, where everything else takes place, all the big events that happen in this movie that could be, groundbreaking and changing of the movie that makes it actually interesting, are all dream sequences. So the fact that we have this dream sequence shit that keeps happening with the aspect ratios, it ruins the ending for me, at least. Now, granted, there are people that are going to defend this, and I can understand it. People can dissect this last 5 minutes of the film and say, oh, well, this is something that, he probably dreamt about, and, that has garnered from the paranoia of what could be happening at night. So, and no one knows what it is that comes out at night. And, there could be a whole thesis paper written about what the title means in this whole movie. And it does kind of spark the discussion of, paranoia in modern society and what would happen in this case. But again, I also feel that narratively, it really bugs me. It bugs me. And in the fact that they use this blatant cliche is so dumb. I mean, I can't really give you some, elegant words here. I just think it's just a dumb move. Granted, they don't show him actually waking up at the end, so you are left to question yourself, was he dreaming? But the problem is that if that is the question they are going for, if that is the question that they were going for, they really ruined it. Because the aspect ratio, because we notice the aspect ratios change from reality to dream to back to reality to dream. So when we see the aspect ratio change again, we're all led to believe that that is a dream. And granted, he doesn't wake up. We don't even know if he wakes up. But we already know from conditioning throughout this entire film that whenever the aspect ratio changes, it is nothing of reality. So because we know of that throughout the film, it ruins the ending. all the interesting stuff that happens in the ending and even in the dream sequences that actually, like, kind of bring some danger to people are just kind of thrown aside and said, oh, that's just a dream, or that's just something that he thought was happening, or something like that. I did not like this ending, because I get what he was trying for. I really do think what the director was trying to get at, but I think they did it in a really poor way that ended up with me not really liking the ending of this film. The first 2 acts are pretty much kind of well done. I really do think so, because it really does highlight what kind of paranoia would come at night, you know, with this biotoxin in the air that no one knows where it came from, because it's been done before. You know, we know what this kind of stuff is, and it explores the paranoia in the aspect. But I also feel that at the same time, there has been other films and television shows that have done this concept to a little bit of a better degree. Now, you're free to disagree with me if you want. If you're fans of this movie, great. I can understand where you guys are coming from. But I can also understand where people are coming from when they say that this movie is totally utter garbage. I personally don't think it's utter garbage. I just think the ending, the last scene of this, the last whole sequence of this whole film really kind of pissed me off, because nothing ever changes. Nothing ever does. And that's with the use of the aspect ratios that are in this film, because I've already kind of discussed it, but the aspect ratios were the motif of dreams. And it's just odd to me that, you know, the director didn't think once about, like, oh, well, this will definitely confuse people. Oh, wait, no, they won't, because they would already know that this is a dream. So I guess this last portion of the movie, he wasn't even there. He wasn't there to see anything. He was just still up in his room, and he just kind of thought all of this stuff. It kind of makes the protagonist of this film very inactive to me. But yeah, that's just the end of my spoiler stuff. There is no monster. That everyone's already discussed this, that the It can be interpreted as paranoia or fear, or the constant pressure from the outside forces, this constant pressure of fear and anxiety. That's the It. That It comes at night. And I do feel that half of this movie is good, and then the last half of this movie is just kind of bad. But yeah, like, aside from that, I think the acting was okay from a lot of the cast members. I felt that some of the writing was pretty good, and I really did feel some of the paranoia. But again, it's just that goddamn ending and the aspect ratio motif that kept me from actually really enjoying this film. And it ended up with me being very mixed about the film. So in the end, I'm going to give It Comes at Night a C-. This movie is not grade A material, and I think the critics are kind of lying to themselves for it. I don't think this is a great film, but I think this is an okay film. This is definitely one of those films I could see maybe an art student really dissecting and tearing apart and just saying, like, this is the narrative that they were trying to go for. This is the message of the film. But you know, that's just me. So what did you guys think of It Comes at Night? Do you think it's a modern horror classic or survival classic? Or do you think it's just another thing that we've seen before and they probably don't need to make any more of? Let me know that in the comment section down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.